The station, called Apex Prime, floated in the darkness between stars. It was old, older than most civilizations that used it, and it served one purpose only. Here, the rulers of the galaxy gathered to make decisions that shaped the lives of trillions. Today, 347 species had sent their representatives. They filled a chamber so large that clouds formed near its ceiling. Beings of every shape imaginable sat in floating pods arranged in a great spiral. Some breathed oxygen. Others breathed methane or chlorine. A few did not breathe at all. But they all had one thing in common. They were here to decide the fate of a small blue world called Earth. Ambassador Zethral of the Vorian Collective rose to speak. He was tall and thin, with skin like polished silver, and eyes that glowed faint purple. His voice carried across the chamber, through translation devices that converted his words into hundreds of languages at once. "We have watched the humans for 200 of their years," he said. "We have studied them. We have debated among ourselves. And now we must face the truth that we have tried to avoid." He waved one long arm, and a holographic image of Earth appeared in the center of the chamber. Blue oceans, green and brown continents, white clouds swirling over the surface. "They are dangerous," Zethral continued. "More dangerous than any species we have encountered in 10,000 years. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some delegates leaned forward with interest. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Look at their history," Zethral said. The hologram changed, showing scenes of human warfare. Ancient battles with swords and spears. Explosions that consumed entire cities. Mushroom clouds rising into poisoned skies. They fight constantly. They kill each other over land, over resources, over ideas. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their own world, and they have come close to using them. The hologram shifted again, showing graphs and charts. Their technology advances at a rate we have never seen before. 100 years ago, they could barely fly. Now they send machines to other planets. They split atoms. They edit their own genetic code. At this rate, they will develop faster than light travel within 50 years. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Every species present understood what that meant. Humans would soon be able to leave their world and spread across the stars. "And yet," Zethral said, his voice dropping lower, "despite all their disasters, despite all their wars and plagues and self-inflicted wounds, they refuse to die. They adapt. They survive. They grow stronger." He paused and looked around the chamber. "Can any of you imagine what will happen when such a species is set loose among us?" High Arbiter Yelmora rose from her seat at the center of the chamber. She was ancient, even by galactic standards. Her body was insectoid, covered in a hard shell that had turned dark with age. She had overseen the judgment of countless worlds, and her word was law. "The Assembly will now vote," she announced. "The question before us is simple. Shall humanity be allowed to join the galactic community, or shall they be removed?" The word "removed" hung in the air. Everyone knew what it meant. Sterilization. The complete destruction of all human life on Earth. The votes came quickly. Pod after pod lit up with colors indicating their choice. Red for removal, blue for acceptance. A few pods glowed yellow, indicating abstention. When the count was finished, the result was overwhelming. 312 species had voted for removal. 32 had voted for acceptance. 3 had abstained. High Arbiter Yelmora nodded slowly. "The motion carries. The human species is judged unfit to exist. A fleet will be dispatched to carry out the sentence. Earth will be cleansed within one standard galactic cycle." Far across the galaxy, on the planet that had just been condemned to death, a woman named Lisa Brennan was doing what she did every night. She sat alone in an observatory on a mountain in California, watching the stars through a powerful telescope. Lisa was 34 years old, with tired eyes and hair that she always forgot to brush. She had spent her whole life studying the sky, searching for signs of life beyond Earth. Most of her colleagues thought she was wasting her time. The universe seemed empty and silent. But tonight, something was different. A cluster of objects had appeared at the edge of the solar system, near the orbit of Neptune. They were moving in formation, and they were moving fast. Lisa checked her instruments 3 times. Then, she checked them again. Her hands began to shake. The objects were not asteroids. They were not comets. They were ships. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. She reached for her phone and called her supervisor. Then she called the director of the observatory. Within an hour, telescopes around the world were turning toward the same patch of sky, and the news was spreading through secret channels to the governments of every nation on Earth. The ships did not try to hide. They broadcast a message on every frequency in every language known to humanity. It took Kevin Ortiz, a linguist working for the United Nations, 3 days to decode it. When he finished, he sat in silence for a long time, staring at the words on his screen. Then, he picked up the phone and asked to speak to the Secretary General. The message was short and simple. Kevin read it aloud to a room full of world leaders who had gathered in an emergency session. Your species has been judged by the Galactic Conclave. You have been found unfit to exist among civilized peoples. You have been sentenced to removal. A fleet has been dispatched to carry out this sentence. You have 6 of your months to prepare. There will be no appeal. There will be no negotiation. This message is a courtesy, nothing more. The room exploded into chaos. Some leaders shouted in anger. Others sat frozen in shock. A few began to weep. But in the back of the room, a woman in a military uniform remained calm. General Patricia Vance had served her country for 30 years. She had seen wars and disasters and crises of every kind. And she had learned one important lesson. Panic solved nothing. She waited for the noise to die down. Then, she stood up and walked to the front of the room. "They want us dead," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a knife. "That much is clear. Now, I would like to hear alternatives." The room fell silent. General Vance looked at the faces around her, presidents and prime ministers, generals and admirals, scientists and diplomats. All of them looked lost. All of them looked afraid. "We have 6 months," she said. "That is not much time, but it is not nothing. We can spend those months crying and praying and waiting to die, or we can spend them fighting." She let the words hang in the air. "I know which option I prefer. The question is, what about the rest of you?" Slowly, one by one, the leaders in the room began to nod. And in that moment, something changed. Humanity had been given a death sentence, but humanity had decided not to accept it. The world learned the truth on a Tuesday morning. Every television channel, every radio station, every website carried the same message. Aliens were real. They were coming, and they intended to kill every human being on Earth. The first few days were chaos. Riots broke out in 100 cities. People flooded the streets, some screaming in terror, others praying for salvation. Stores were looted, fires burned, governments struggled to maintain order. But then something unexpected happened. The chaos began to fade. People stopped fighting each other and started asking a different question. What can we do? In a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Patricia Vance was asking the same question. She had gathered the brightest minds she could find. Scientists, engineers, military strategists, and diplomats filled a long conference table, their faces lit by the glow of computer screens. "Let me be clear about our situation," she said. "The fleet heading toward us contains approximately 1,200 warships. They have technology thousands of years more advanced than ours. In a direct fight, we would last perhaps a few hours." She paused to let that sink in. However, we are not going to give them a direct fight. A physicist named Samuel Huang raised his hand. He was a small man with glasses and a nervous habit of tapping his pen against the table. What exactly do you have in mind, General? We cannot win, Vance said. But we can make them pay a price. We can make destroying Earth so costly that they will have to think twice. And while they are thinking, we will find other options. An engineer named Natalie Reyes leaned forward. She was young for this group, barely 30, but she had a reputation for solving impossible problems. You want to turn the entire solar system into a trap. Exactly, Vance said. The plan took shape over the following weeks. Every nation on Earth contributed whatever it could. Old rivalries were forgotten. Ancient enemies became allies. For the first time in human history, there was no American military or Chinese military or Russian military. There was only the human military. Nuclear weapons were pulled from their silos and reprogrammed. Instead of targeting cities on Earth, they would target ships in space. Satellites were equipped with weapons and sensors. Factories that once built cars and electronics now built drones by the thousands. But weapons were only part of the plan. Kevin Ortiz, the linguist who had first decoded the alien message, was given a different task. His job was to communicate with the conclave, to buy time, and to learn as much as possible about the enemy. He broadcast his first message from a radio telescope in Puerto Rico. It was simple and direct. This is Earth calling the Galactic Conclave. We have received your message. We do not accept your judgment. We request the opportunity to speak in our own defense. The response came 3 days later. It was from High Arbiter Yelmora herself. There is nothing to discuss. Your species has been observed for 200 years. We know what you are. We know what you will become. The judgment is final. Kevin did not give up. He sent another message, and another. He asked questions. He requested information. He tried every approach he could think of. Most of his messages were ignored. But slowly, a picture began to form. The conclave was not a single government. It was an alliance of hundreds of species, each with its own interests and opinions. They had voted to destroy humanity, but the vote had not been unanimous. 3 species abstained, Kevin reported to General Vance. The Keth, the Solari, and the Ven. They did not vote for our destruction, but they did not vote against it either. Why? Vance asked. I do not know yet, but it suggests that not everyone in the galaxy wants us dead. Meanwhile, Natalie Reyes was building something extraordinary. Using every resource available, she had designed a network of orbital defense platforms. They were crude compared to alien technology, but they were armed with railguns capable of firing metal slugs at incredible speeds. They will not stop the fleet, she admitted, but they will hurt it, and sometimes that is enough to change minds. Across the world, ordinary people were preparing in their own ways. Underground shelters were dug in every country. Food and water were stockpiled. Children were taught survival skills in schools. A former firefighter named Danny Morales organized a militia in Chicago. His group trained every day, learning to fight with whatever weapons they could find. They knew they could not defeat an alien army, but they could resist. They could make the enemy bleed. My grandfather fought in a war, Danny told his volunteers. He told me that you do not have to win a fight to matter. You just have to refuse to lose. You just have to keep standing up, no matter how many times they knock you down. In Tokyo, a scientist named Yuki Tanaka worked on a different kind of weapon. She was building a device that could hack into alien communication systems and broadcast human messages directly to the Conclave fleet. They have decided who we are based on our worst moments, she explained. I want to show them our best moments, our art, our music, our love. Maybe it will not change anything, but maybe it will. As the weeks passed, something remarkable happened. The fear that had gripped the world began to transform. It did not disappear, but it was joined by something else. Something stronger. Determination. Humanity had been told that it was unfit to exist, that it was too violent, too dangerous, too unpredictable. And in response, humanity had done something that no other condemned species had ever done. It had united. On the other side of the galaxy, the Conclave fleet continued its journey toward Earth. Commander Drakon of the Zareth Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars slide past. He had destroyed worlds before, dozens of them. It was unpleasant work, but necessary. The galaxy had to be kept safe from dangerous species. He expected this mission to be no different. The humans would panic and scatter. A few might fight back, but it would be hopeless. Within a few weeks, Earth would be cleansed, and the Conclave could move on to other matters. He had no idea that he was flying into a trap. He had no idea that he was about to face something the Conclave had never encountered before. He had no idea that the humans were waiting for him. The Conclave fleet entered the solar system on a cold morning in December. 1,200 warships in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the light of a distant sun. Commander Drakon stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sword of Judgment, and watched the human world grow larger on his view screen. He was tall for a Zareth, nearly 3 meters, with gray-armed skin and forearms that ended in sharp claws. His species had been warriors for 10,000 years. They had never lost a war. "Begin the approach," he ordered. "Standard extermination pattern. I want this finished within 2 weeks." His officers obeyed without question. The fleet began to move deeper into the solar system, passing the orbits of the outer planets. Neptune, Uranus, Saturn. Then they reached Jupiter, and everything changed. The first warning came from a sensor officer. "Commander, I am detecting movement among the asteroids." "What kind of movement?" Before the officer could answer, the view screen lit up with explosions. Small objects were swarming toward the fleet from every direction. Thousands of them, moving fast and erratically. "Drones," the officer reported, his voice rising with surprise. "Human drones. They are attacking our supply vessels." Drakon watched as 3 cargo ships exploded in rapid succession. The drones were small and primitive, but there were so many of them. They crashed into the ships like angry insects, detonating on impact. "Destroy them," Drakon ordered. The fleet's weapons came online. Energy beams swept through space, vaporizing drones by the hundreds. But more kept coming. The humans had hidden them among the asteroids, waiting for the fleet to pass. When the attack finally ended, 7 ships had been destroyed, and 12 more damaged. It was a small loss for a fleet of 1,200. But Drakon felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Annoyance. "They knew we were coming," he said. "They prepared for us." His second-in-command, a female Zareth named Velsha, nodded slowly. The condemned species usually do not fight back. They beg. They try to run. They do not set traps. Drakon dismissed her concerns with a wave of his clawed hand. "It changes nothing. They are still primitive. They cannot stop us." The fleet continued its advance, but now they moved more carefully, scanning for threats. They reached Mars, and found another surprise waiting for them. The red planet was covered with what appeared to be simple structures, habitats, research stations, the kind of buildings that a young species might build when exploring a new world. Drakon ordered a scan to determine the population so they could be added to the extermination count. "Commander," the sensor officer said, his voice strange, "the structures are empty, but I am detecting energy signatures beneath the surface. Thousands of them." "What kind of energy signatures?" "Nuclear." The explosions began before anyone could react. The humans had buried bombs all across Mars, and now they detonated in sequence. Ships that had descended too close were caught in the blasts. 5 more warships were destroyed, A dozen others were damaged by debris. Drakon slammed his fist against his command chair. How did they know where we would fly? How did they predict our movements? The answer was simple, though Drakon did not want to admit it. The humans had studied every piece of information they could find about the Conclave. They had analyzed footage of previous exterminations. They had learned how the fleet operated, and they had used that knowledge against it. On Earth, General Vance received the reports with grim satisfaction. The attacks had been successful beyond her hopes. But she knew they had only delayed the inevitable. The fleet will adapt, she told her staff. They will be more careful now. The next phase will be harder. Natalie Reyes nodded. Her orbital defense platforms were ready. They had been launched weeks ago, and now floated in a ring around the planet, invisible against the blackness of space. When they enter range, we will show them what else we have prepared, she said. The fleet reached Earth orbit on a bright January afternoon. Drakon stared at the blue planet below, feeling a hatred that surprised even him. This small world had caused him more trouble than any target in his career. Begin the bombardment, he ordered. The first energy beams lanced down toward the surface. Mountains crumbled. Millions died in the first hour. But then the orbital platforms revealed themselves. Railguns fired, sending metal slugs at tremendous speed toward the attacking ships. A Zareth cruiser was hit and broke apart. Then another, then a third. Drakon watched in disbelief as his ships were struck by weapons that should not have been able to touch them. The humans had built something in secret, something that could hurt his fleet. "Return fire!" he shouted. "Destroy those platforms!" The fleet's weapons turned against the orbital defenses. One by one, the platforms were destroyed. But each one fought until the end, taking alien ships with it. On the surface, the battle continued. Human soldiers fired missiles at landing parties. Submarines launched torpedoes at ships hovering over the oceans. Every city became a fortress. Every street became a battlefield. Danny Morales led his militia through the ruins of Chicago. They had captured alien weapons from a crashed ship, and were using them against the invaders. The Zareth soldiers were stronger and better equipped, but they did not know the city like Danny did. "Hit them and run," he told his people. "Never stay in one place. Make them chase us. Make them bleed for every block." In Tokyo, Dr. Yuki Tanaka finally completed her communication device. She broadcast her first message directly into the Conclave Fleet's network. It was not a weapon. It was a song. A human song about hope and survival. She followed it with images. Children laughing. Couples holding hands. Artists creating beauty from nothing. "I do not know if you can understand this," she said in her broadcast. "But this is who we are. Not just the wars, not just the violence. We are also this. We are also love and hope and dreams. Is this really what you want to destroy?" No one answered her. But across the fleet, soldiers paused in their work. They looked at the images. They listened to the music, and some of them began to wonder. In the command center of the Sword of Judgment, Drakon received a report that made him stop cold. A Conclave cruiser had been brought down by a coordinated attack involving submarines from 12 different human nations. 12 nations working together against him. His second-in-command, Velsha, spoke quietly. "Commander, I have been reviewing the records. No species has ever responded to extermination like this. They are fighting as one. All of them, together." Drakon said nothing. He stared at the view screen, watching the small blue world that refused to die. For the first time in his long career, he felt something that might have been doubt. The war had lasted 3 weeks, and Earth was burning. Cities that had stood for centuries were now rubble. Rivers ran black with ash. The sky was choked with smoke from fires that no one could put out. But humanity was still fighting. General Patricia Vance moved her command center every 12 hours, staying one step ahead of the Conclave's tracking systems. She slept in trucks, in basements, in caves. Her uniform was torn and stained with dirt. Her hair had turned gray from stress. But her voice was still strong, and her orders were still obeyed. "Report," she said, studying a map of the eastern United States. Her aide, a young lieutenant named Maria Santos, pulled up the latest information. "We have lost 60% of our major cities. Casualty estimates are in the hundreds of millions. But our underground shelters are holding, and our resistance forces are still operational in every region." The numbers were horrific, but they were not surprising. She had known from the beginning that this war would cost them dearly. "What about the enemy?" she asked. "They have lost approximately 150 ships. That is about 12% of their fleet. Their ground forces are taking heavy casualties in urban areas. They did not expect us to fight this hard." No, Vance thought, they did not expect us at all. Across the ocean, Danny Morales was teaching his fighters a new trick. They had captured an entire crate of alien rifles from a supply convoy, and now they were learning how to use them. "The trigger is here," Danny said, demonstrating. "The power cell goes in the back. Point and shoot. Simple enough for an alien to use, simple enough for us." His militia had grown in the past weeks. What had started as a few dozen volunteers was now a force of several hundred. They came from every background. Teachers and truck drivers, doctors and construction workers, old and young, men and women, all of them united by a single purpose: survival. "Remember," Danny told them, "we are not trying to win battles. We are trying to make them afraid. Every time they walk down a street, they should be looking over their shoulders. Every time they enter a building, they should be wondering if it is a trap. Fear is a weapon. Let us use it." In a destroyed laboratory somewhere in Europe, Samuel Huang worked day and night on captured alien technology. He had assembled a team of scientists from a dozen countries, and together they were learning secrets that the Conclave had guarded for millennia. "Their shields work on a specific frequency," he explained to his colleagues, pointing at a diagram on a cracked computer screen. "If we can generate a counter-frequency, we might be able to weaken them." "How long will that take?" someone asked. Huang looked at his notes. "Normally, decades. But we do not have decades. So we will have to work faster." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One morning, a small ship appeared in Earth's atmosphere. It was not a Conclave warship. It was smaller, civilian, and it was broadcasting a signal of peace. General Vance ordered her forces to hold fire. The ship landed in a field, outside of what had once been Geneva, and 3 beings emerged. They were Keth, one of the species that had abstained from the vote to destroy humanity. They were small, about the size of human children, with soft blue fur and large dark eyes. They looked harmless, but their ship had flown through a war zone, and that took courage. The leader of the group introduced himself as Thresh. He spoke through a translation device that turned his chirping language into English. "We have come to help," he said. Kevin Ortiz, who had traveled across half of Europe to be present for this meeting, stepped forward. "Your Conclave voted to destroy us. Why would you risk your lives to help?" Thresh's large eyes blinked slowly. "We watched you. We have been watching since the fleet arrived. And we have seen something that we do not understand." "What is that?" "You fight," Thresh said. "You know you cannot win. You know that your species will be destroyed, and yet you fight anyway. Every one of you. Old and young, strong and weak. You do not surrender. You do not give up. You just keep fighting." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "In all the history of the Conclave, no species has ever done this. They always submit, they always accept their fate. But not you. You refuse to die. And that," he looked at the humans around him, "that is worthy of respect." The Keth had brought gifts. data files containing detailed information about the Conclave fleet, weaknesses in their ships, flaws in their strategies, secrets that the Conclave had kept hidden for thousands of years. "Use this," Thresh said. "Make them pay for what they are doing, and if you survive, remember that not all of the galaxy wanted you dead." General Vance looked at the data and felt something she had not felt in weeks. Hope. "Thank you," she said to the Keth. "We will not forget this." With the new information, everything changed. Samuel Huang's team finally cracked the alien shield technology. Natalie Reyes designed new weapons that could penetrate Conclave armor. Kevin Ortiz discovered which species in the fleet were having doubts and began targeting his broadcasts at them. And on the battlefield, human forces began to win small victories. A Zereth commander was killed in an ambush in South America. A supply depot was destroyed in Australia. A communications center was captured in Africa, giving the humans access to enemy transmissions. But the most important change was happening inside the Conclave fleet itself. Commander Drakon had not slept in days. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching reports of losses pile up on his screen. His second-in-command, Velsha, approached him carefully. "Commander," she said, "we need to discuss the situation." "There is nothing to discuss," Drakon snapped. "We will continue until the mission is complete." "The mission was supposed to be complete 2 weeks ago," Velsha said quietly. "We have lost more ships here than in the last 10 exterminations combined. Our soldiers are exhausted, morale is collapsing, and there are rumors." "What rumors?" Velsha hesitated. "Some are saying that we made a mistake, that the humans were not the threat we thought they were, that we should have found another way." Drakon turned to face her, his eyes blazing. "Are you saying we should retreat?" "I am saying that we should consider all options." For a long moment, Drakon said nothing. Then he turned back to the view screen, staring at the battered planet below. "No," he said finally, "we will not retreat. We will finish what we started, whatever it costs." But even as he spoke the words, he knew that the war had changed. The humans were no longer just targets. They were enemies, real enemies, and Drakon was not sure anymore that he could beat them. The final battle began at dawn. For 6 months, humanity had fought against the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. They had lost billions of lives. Their cities were ruins. Their world was scarred and broken. But they were still standing. And now, armed with Keth intelligence and technology reverse-engineered from captured ships, they were ready to strike back. General Patricia Vance stood in her mobile command center, surrounded by screens showing the positions of every human force and every Conclave ship. She had not slept in 2 days. Her hands shook from exhaustion, but her mind was clear. "Is everyone in position?" she asked. Maria Santos checked her displays. "Yes, General. All units report ready." Vance took a deep breath. This was it. Everything they had worked for, everything they had sacrificed, came down to the next few hours. "Begin the operation," she said. Across the planet, human forces moved as one. In orbit, the few remaining defense platforms opened fire on the Conclave fleet, drawing their attention. On the ground, missiles launched from hidden bunkers, targeting the fleet's communication relays. But the real weapon was invisible. Natalie Reyes had spent weeks working on a virus, a piece of code designed to infiltrate the Conclave's navigation systems. With help from the Keth, she had found a way to upload it directly into the fleet's central computer. Now, as the battle began, the virus woke up. Ships began to lose control. Navigation systems displayed wrong coordinates. Engines fired at random. 2 cruisers collided in orbit, exploding in a ball of fire visible from the surface. On the bridge of the Sword of Judgment, Commander Drakon watched in horror as his fleet fell into chaos. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Our systems are compromised," an officer reported. "We cannot purge it." Then disconnect from the network. Switch to manual control. We are trying, Commander, but the virus is spreading faster than we can isolate it. Drakon slammed his fist against his chair. The humans had done this. Somehow they had turned his own technology against him. On the surface, Danny Morales led his militia in a final assault on a Zareth landing zone. They moved through the ruins of Chicago, using every trick they had learned in months of fighting. Ambushes, traps, hit-and-run attacks. The Zareth soldiers fought back, but they were confused and disorganized. Their commanders could not reach them. Their reinforcements were not coming. For the first time, they felt what humans had felt since the beginning of the war. Fear. In Tokyo, Dr. Yuki Tanaka broadcast one last message into the Conclave network. It was not music this time. It was a simple statement, spoken in every language her device could translate. We did not ask for this war. You came to destroy us because you feared what we might become. But look at what we have become. We have become united. We have become strong. We have become everything you were afraid of. And we are still standing. Think about that. Think about what it means. And ask yourselves if you really want to continue this fight. Her words spread through the fleet like fire. Soldiers stopped fighting to listen. Officers paused and looked at each other. For a moment, the battle seemed to hold its breath. On the Sword of Judgment, Drakon prepared to give his final order. He would command a full planetary bombardment, destroying every human city, every shelter, every trace of the species that had humiliated him. Target all remaining population centers, he said. Fire everything we have. But his officers did not obey. Velsha stepped forward, her face calm. No, Commander. What did you say? I said no. She looked around the bridge at the other officers. We have lost 150 ships. We have lost thousands of soldiers. We have fought for 6 months against a species that should have been destroyed in 6 days. And they are still fighting. She turned back to Drakon. This is not an extermination anymore. It is a war. And it is a war we are losing. You are a coward, Drakon spat. No, Velsha said. I am a realist. Look at your fleet, Commander. Look at what they have done to us, and ask yourself, what will they do to us in another 6 months? In another year? In another decade? She gestured at the view screen, where Earth hung battered but unbroken against the stars. They will not stop. They will never stop, and every year they will grow stronger. Every year they will learn more. Every year they will come closer to matching us. Is that what you want? An endless war against an enemy that refuses to die? Drakon opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He looked at his officers and saw the same doubt on all of their faces, the same exhaustion, the same fear. The Solari and Ven ships broke formation first. They had been receiving human broadcasts for weeks, and they had begun to question everything they believed about the Conclave's mission. One by one they pulled back, refusing to participate in the final attack. Then the Keth openly declared their support for humanity, broadcasting a message to every ship in the fleet. This war is wrong. We will not be part of genocide. The cracks spread. Species that had voted for humanity's destruction began to reconsider. Arguments broke out on bridges across the fleet. Commanders received conflicting orders from their homeworlds. And finally, in the chaos, Drakon's own officers refused to fire. The Conclave fleet withdrew. It was not a victory in the traditional sense. Earth was devastated. Billions were dead. It would take generations to rebuild. But humanity had survived. Word spread across the galaxy. The species that had been condemned to death had fought back and won. They had faced the full might of the Conclave and refused to break. On the station called Apex Prime, High Arbiter Yelmora received the news in silence. She had overseen the destruction of countless worlds. She had never failed before. But now she had failed. And worse than that, she had created something new, something the galaxy had never seen, a species that could not be broken. In the ruins of what had once been New York City, General Patricia Vance stood before a camera. She was wounded and exhausted. Her uniform was torn and bloody, but she was alive. "You came here to destroy us," she said, knowing that her words were being broadcast across the stars. "You called us a virus. You called us a threat. You thought you could wipe us out like insects." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "You were wrong. We are humanity. We do not surrender. We do not give up. We do not go quietly into the darkness. And now you know what we are capable of." Far away, in the observatory where everything had begun, Lisa Brennan sat at her telescope. The sky was still full of smoke, but she could see glimpses of stars through the haze. She was no longer looking for signs of alien life. She knew now that the universe was full of it, full of wonders and terrors beyond imagination. But she was also full of something else, something new. Pride. Humanity had been tested and had not been found wanting. They had been pushed to the edge of extinction and had pushed back. They had shown the galaxy what they were made of. And somewhere out there, among the stars, other species were watching and wondering. The Conclave had tried to destroy Earth because they feared what humanity might become. Now they would find out. Lisa smiled and pointed her telescope toward the distant stars. The future was waiting.